All right, so this is how I remember it. I draw a left one because I think it's easier to see left to right, but I'll use a combined set of the tips that Keeney and some other people gave. So if I'm going to draw a left one, I'm going to go V, I, V, and then 3 lines, and then an X, and a Z, and then 3 lines here, and then 3 V's that are going to cross, and this one right here and this one are going to have this line and this line meet in the middle right here. Like that. So then I'll just draw the dotted line so you can kind of see the divisions. This is not very pretty, but it'll do. So then this is real Texans drink cold beer. Roots, trunks, divisions, chords, branches. And these are technically terminal branches, but I don't think we have to label that. So then for roots, C5, C6, C7, C8, and then we switch to T1. There's no C9, it's T1 at the bottom. And then the trunks labeled superior, middle, and inferior. Some people label them upper, middle, lower, but I suggest doing superior, middle, and inferior, and you'll see why in a second. And then, since we're drawing the left one, if you were to lay your arm across your paper, you'd see that, and your hands being on, like your hand being on this side, and your upper arm being over here, and this is a left one, your lateral arm would be on this side, so this part is lateral, and this one's posterior because it is posterior to the axillary artery, if I remember correctly. And then this is medial. And then this is the mamru. All these branches are mamru, and so that's M, A, M, R, U, and in order, and you're just going to have to memorize it, but it's musculocutaneous, axillary, median. I'll write median, the whole thing, because this down here, hold on, that is medial, but this is the median nerve, and then radial and ulnar. And then we can start, the next thing I suggest you doing is going through the divisions and labeling the divisions. And so the one rule to follow here is they're either going to be labeled posterior or anterior. And anything going to this posterior chord right here is going to be labeled posterior. So this one right here is labeled posterior, and this one, and this one. So if we label that, I'll just put P for now. Everything else is anterior, so this one doesn't get the posterior chord, so this one's anterior, and then this one is anterior, and then this one is anterior as well, since it's not going to posterior. So anterior, anterior, anterior. And then now we'll do nerves. So I think the easiest way to do it is to go from left to right, and I think I typically kind of go from here to there, and then kind of work my way down. Because when you have to memorize this many things all at once, you kind of have to go in the same order every time. So the first one is dorsal scapular. I remember that by this. If you look at this like it's a shark or a fish's nose, then this is where the dorsal fin would be up here. Then the next one is long thoracic, and it's going to branch. And technically it's going to go this way. You see that in a couple different drawings. I want to double check that. I don't know if he cares if it stays here. Everybody's been drawing it straight down, and he did as well. But in other pictures, I've seen it drawn where it kind of crosses this trunk region for whatever reason. I'll probably double check with him Monday and see if it really matters if he wants it straight down or if he wants it here. So this is long thoracic, and don't forget it gets branches from C6 and then C7, and you have to draw that. And then there are 2 off of superior, and that's suprascapular and nerve to subclavian. It's not the nerve to subclavius, my bad. Nerve to subclavius, that's the little muscle under the clavicle. And then the way you can remember these two is, and this is why I went back and said, call this superior, middle, and inferior, and not upper, middle, lower, because there's only 2 of the nerves that start with S, and they go on the superior trunk. So that's these 2, the suprascapular and the subclavian, or nerve to subclavius, my bad. Then you've got 1 on lateral, and it's the only one that starts with L, so that's lateral pectoral. And we're going to skip posterior and go down to medial. So if there's a lateral pectoral, then there's going to be a medial pectoral. And then there's 2 more down here. And the other 2 are the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm and then the medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm. And I remember these because if this is up here as lateral pec, and then we know that then there's going to be a medial pec, the way to remember these in their order is if we're going on the brachial plexus way up back by the spine and down the arm, we're going to see the medial pec first, and then we're going to see the arm next, and then the forearm after that, going proximal to distal. And then all we have is 3 more left here, and that's the upper subscap, and then the thoracodorsal, and then the lower subscap. And you can remember, I mean, everybody's got their own way to remember this. I just say oos to the loose because I think that's kind of funny. It helps me remember. I don't really know why. But that's everything. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then the nerve roots are a little funky. But some people suggested you follow these to try to guess what all the nerve roots are. I don't suggest trying to follow these. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. But there are a few rules that you can follow to remember them. So dorsal scapular is C5. That one should be pretty straightforward because the only thing it's coming off of and touching is C5. And then long thoracic is C5 to C7. And that makes sense because we get a branch. So it starts on C5, it gets a branch from C6, and then it gets a branch from C7. So that's all of its nerve roots. And then the next rule you can follow is any nerve moving forward that has an S in the name is C5, C6. The only exception is dorsal scap, and we've already done that, but it's also kind of makes sense that it wouldn't have C5 and C6 because it's only touching C5. So this one here is C5 to C6. This one C5, C6. And we can go ahead and go down here and go ahead and label these C5, C6, and C5, C6. Then we're going to continue down this line and we'll go to lateral pectoral. This one is C5, C7. There's not a really great way to remember this one. Like I said, try not to try to draw lines from here and there to justify it. It doesn't really make sense. Just know that this is kind of on the top side and that C5 and C7 are on the top side, but I would just memorize this one. And then musculocutaneous is also C5, C7. One other rule we'll see that we can kind of help remember some of these last few on the MAMRU side is that for musculocutaneous, for axillary, and then for ulnar, these three their nerve root will be the same as the last thing they touch. So this one will match this one will match this one, and then the ulnar will match this one. So axillary will be C5, C6. And then we've knocked out the top row. We're going to go here. So the only one we don't have here is thoracodorsal. And if you remember it from last unit, it was C6 to C8. And then the radial and ulnar are a little weird. Not the ulnar, but the median and radial are a little weird. These are just ones you have to memorize on this side. Median is C6 to T1, and radial is C5 to T1. I kind of thought median, since it's kind of, remember that was like that big old capital M, it's a really big deal. I thought this would probably have everything, but it doesn't. It's C6 to T1. Radial gets all of the nerve roots that we started from in the beginning. So just remember that. That's just something you have to memorize. There's not really any tricks to it. I haven't found yet. Then the last few that we have left are these three on the bottom. And this is C8 to T1. And then the middle one is just T1. And then this one's C8 to T1. Yet again, there's not a ton of great ways to remember this. But what's nice about this group, these groups of three here, are the ones on the outside are the same nerve root, and the one in the middle is different. So that's C5, C6, and C5, C6, and then the one in the middle is different. And it's the same way down here. So it's C8 to T1, C8 to T1, and this is just T1. So, and then if you remember, this one, the musculocutaneous, the axillary, and then the ulnar are the last thing that they touched. So this last one is C8 to T1. I think that's everything, and so that's kind of how I remember all these. It kind of gets confusing to do the nerve roots in any other way, so I just kind of look at them and where they're coming from, like on this one and that one, and try to justify it. But then this S rule, that everything except dorsal scap, everything with an S in it is C5, C6. That covers 4 of them for you. And then these have a pattern, and then this one, the musculocutaneous, axillary, and ulnar are the last thing that they touch. Covers the rest of those for you. So the only ones you really have to kind of remember off the top of your head are median, radial, and then these a little bit, and then that thoracodorsal and lateral pec. But it's really not that bad. So if you do this probably like 3 or 4 times in a row, you've pretty much got it.